Okay, now that we know what root rot is and what's causing it, let's talk about different type of orchids and how much water they need. I will discuss about certain other important things and factors to determine how much and how often you should water in the third part. But right now, let's talk about different varieties. I have here two Miltoniopsis orchids, and they actually prefer it more moist. They do like to have more moisture in their pots. And like I told you in the previous video, I do give them a lot of aeration in the pots, like extra holes, and I'm using bark medium because I just find it easier, a lot easier and foolproof if you want. So for a beginner, a clear plastic pot and bark medium, I think it's the best because it's easy to control and it's easy to notice when there's something wrong. Okay, so Miltoniopsis orchids, as I was saying, they like to be more moist. And this is a pot that I soaked yesterday, actually. And right now, as you can see, it is still rather moist. But tomorrow, being that it's summer and temperatures are fairly high, tomorrow I will need to water this. So her schedule of watering is actually once every 2 days for myself. Because I do have a lot of aeration, the water evaporates faster, but also because Miltoniopsis like to be kept more moist. So, as this one will approach dryness, I will water it. A relative, if I can call her like that, of the Miltoniopsis orchid, it's the Nelly Eiler orchid, which has in her parentage a Miltonia orchid. And whenever you deal with orchids that have in their parentage the Miltonias, you do need to water more often and you need to keep it more moist. Again, this is an orchid that I watered yesterday, and she is still moist, but because of other factors like the pot size, I don't think I will water this tomorrow, but I think the day after tomorrow. Either way, the same applies. As it approaches dryness, I will water it. So whenever you're dealing with orchids that do have Miltonias in their parentage, remember that they do like a lot more moisture than other orchids. This is why it's also important to know what orchid you have, because you can find out what her lineage is and you can better care for it. Oncidiums in their intergeneric can tolerate dryness better than a Miltoniopsis orchid. And these orchids were watered on Friday, and today it is Wednesday. No, sorry, it is Tuesday today, and it is watering time again. As you can see, the medium is fairly dry, maybe not bone dry, but it is fairly dry. If I let this go any drier than this, I will get wrinkled pseudobulbs. And once they get wrinkled, sometimes they never go back to their plump size. And I want to avoid that. Also because I have proper ventilations in my pot, I will not get any root rot whatsoever. Phalaenopsis orchids, in my opinion, are the most abused orchids because they are so popular, and everybody tells you do not overwater your Phalaenopsis, wait for the medium to go dry, and then wait some more, and then you're gonna have to water it. This is totally inaccurate, and in part 3 I'm gonna show you how a dehydrated orchid looks like. These orchids, being that they're so easygoing, can dry out. If you're looking at the spot, it was watered Friday and today it is Tuesday and it looks rather dry, so I will definitely need to water this. A quick tip, don't let the pot dry for more than 1 day or you'll end up with a dehydrated orchid. Phalaenopsis orchids do not have pseudobulbs like Oncidiums to store water. Their only storage way or device is their roots, their plump roots. So they cannot store too much water. If you give proper ventilation, you will not get root rot, but you can also water more often. And Phalaenopsis orchids actually do like water. They don't like to dry out. They will go limp if you let them stay dry for too long. So don't be afraid to water the Phalaenopsis. Don't wait 3 more days when you're seeing the medium is completely dry. Don't do that. It's hurting the plant, especially in summertime, as you will see in the third part. So when you see the medium is dry and when you see the roots getting all silvery like this, then it's time to water definitely. Dendrobium orchids, contrary to popular belief, enjoy lots and lots of water during the summertime. And in the wintertime, some of them require a drier period to make them bloom again. But I'm gonna refer to summertime. They're producing a lot of new shoots and a lot of keikis, and they need to support it. And when you see the medium starts to go dry, and it's almost dry, give them a good water. If you don't, the pseudobulbs will shrivel up just like this, and it will look unsightly. In the winter time, you can give them that drier rest, especially the nobile type. The Phalaenopsis dendrobium doesn't require it. And the rule applies: when you see the medium went dry, don't let it sit for too much. Water them, and they should be okay. Cattleya orchids can tolerate dryness well, again, because they do have pseudobulbs to store their energy and water deposits. But I do water them when the medium is dry. I don't wait another day or 2 days. I just water them, because if you don't, the pseudobulbs will tell you they're dehydrated. They will start to shrivel up, and you will notice it. And if you give them a good water, they will return to their beautiful selves again. But even Cattleyas, which are known to be very resistant to dryness, can suffer if you don't water them enough. So when you see the medium got dry, water them. Don't wait, because the pseudobulbs will suffer and the new growth will suffer, and it will grow slower. If you're dealing with very young plants or seedlings, this is a different matter. Because they don't have a lot of back bulbs to store water and energy, you do have to provide more moisture to them and water them more times a week. Also, because they are potted up in very small pots, the medium will dry out a lot faster. I have here a mix of bark and sphagnum moss just to retain slightly more moisture. But because the pot is very small and I do have ventilation holes, they will actually go dry pretty fast, even with the sphagnum moss. So keep that into consideration. They are weak, they don't have back bulbs to sustain them, so don't let them go dry. When you see that the mix is dry, water instantly, because they will shrivel up very, very fast. They do need a lot of moisture. And it's okay to use a combination of sphagnum moss with seedlings. It's really okay, just as long as you give them proper ventilation in the pot. Zygopetalums don't really like to go bone dry, so when you see that your medium is still slightly, very slightly moist, you can give them a good water. Again, I cannot stress this enough, proper ventilation in the pot will save you from root rot, and it's, in my opinion, the best way to keep orchids that do require a lot of moisture without going to the other side of being too moist. So yeah, zygopetalums like to be kept slightly more moist than other orchids. Vanda orchids absolutely love being watered, and there are quite a few different ways to keep a Vanda orchid. I'm just going to refer to keeping it in a hanging basket with no medium to the roots. It is literally impossible to overwater this Vanda, except if you forget it in the bucket for 2 days, but other than that it is impossible, because the roots have so much air around them that they will never rot. Even though you will water it, let's say 8 times a day, it will not rot. And this is the good thing with keeping your Vanda orchids in a basket. If you keep it in a pot, you have to be very careful not to rot the roots. Because of their way of growing, they do require a lot of air. So keeping them in these baskets, watering them as many times a day as you want, but being sure that between the leaves there is no water when the night comes, will just be the perfect way to keep them. You cannot overwater them. They will never go rotten on you. Okay, so these were just a few orchids that are commonly available on the market. There are quite a few others that require different care, like Phragmipediums, who need to stay in a tray of water, and Paphiopedilums, who need to stay rather moist than dry. And also there's the Masdevallias and Draculas, who need to have a moist soil all the time, but proper ventilation. They all have something in common: their roots also like to breathe a lot. So the amount of water you give them and how often you water them depends on a lot of things, and I will discuss about them in the third part of this video. The third part will show you what determines how fast the medium will dry out, and this is also important to know. So I'll see you then.